It's often useful to combine two or more rubrics of similar meaning to create one larger, more inclusive, more complete rubric to represent an expression of the case. For example, we might have a kid with a discolored nasal discharge, but feel unsure of whether to describe this as green or as yellowish green. Now, short of getting out our paint chip cards to match colors, we could combine the rubrics: nose discharge greenish and nose discharge yellowish green. The first lists 88 remedies, the second lists 57 remedies, and when combined, we end up with a larger, more inclusive rubric of 105 remedies. Not quite the sum of those two, because they already overlapped with a number of remedies. The meaning of this combined inclusive rubric is nasal discharges that are greenish or yellowish green or something in between. Similarly, we might have a hyperactive kid who's constantly moving from one activity to another. We might look to the rubric mind, traveling, desire for, which lists 28 remedies, or to mind, restlessness, move, must constantly, with 36 remedies. If it's unclear to us which of these fits the case most clearly, it might be safer to combine the two, resulting in a larger rubric of 53 remedies, which is inclusive of the two possibilities, having the meaning desire for traveling, or restless, must constantly move, or something in between these two descriptions. Be cautious to only combine rubrics intended to convey the same meaning in the analysis. You wouldn't wish, for example, to combine nose discharge green with nose discharge thick. The result would be an inclusive rubric of the meaning nasal discharge which is green or thick, or both, in which you really end up losing the characterizing value of both of your original rubrics, as this would include remedies with thin green discharges, as well as with thick discharges of any color. Now, we can combine rubrics as we add them to an analysis, or after they've been collected in a clipboard. Let's look at combining after collection first, and then at combining them as we add them to an analysis. Once they're both in the clipboard, we can open it up to view them. And to combine them, click on one, and then holding down the key that permits multiple selections in your operating system, the Control key in Windows or the Command key on a Mac, click on the second and any additional rubrics that you wish to include in your combination, so that both or all of the rubrics that you wish to combine are highlighted. Now right-click on any of these. On a Mac, use the Control click or the trackpad gesture that you've assigned for this. I'm set up to use a two-finger tap. And from the contextual menu that appears, select Combine Group Rubrics. You'll see two choices here. I always use the first, Group, but let me demonstrate the second, Combine, first. Click Create a new rubric combining the remedies. Okay, to make this active. Note that a new name is proposed for your combined rubric. And by default, this is the name of the larger of the rubrics in your collection, followed by etc. And I should clarify that depending on the repertory view you see, size may vary, but it picks the rubric that's largest in the complete view, in the full view of the synthesis repertory, followed by etc. But you can rename this if you wish by highlighting this and typing in any name that you'd like to replace it for your new rubric. By default, the Delete the Original Rubrics box is checked. If you uncheck this, the original rubrics will remain on the clipboard, but their weighting will be changed to 0 so that they'll appear in the analysis but don't contribute to it. Now, note that you can choose to combine the rubrics, which is what we'll be doing. It's the default option, or to cross them. Now, this latter option keeps only the remedies that the two rubrics share in common. I strongly feel that this second option should never, ever be used, and I've advised the program to not offer it, but that's me. I'm going to uncheck the Delete the Original Rubrics checkbox because I'd like to keep them, and I'll show you why in a moment. Now you can either click the Combine button or note that it's highlighted, so we can just press the Return key on the keyboard to accomplish the same thing. Okay. Note now that a new rubric has appeared here. It's been named after one of the two rubrics we've combined, followed by etc. Now, since I elected to not delete the original rubrics, they remain in the clipboard, but they've been weighted 0, so they don't count in the calculations for the analysis. But I can look and see which remedies are listed in each of these in my final analysis. Had I left the delete the original rubrics option checked, as it is by default, these would have been removed from the clipboard. It's often handy, though, to leave these here, as now we have a record of which rubrics were included in our combination. And we can see which remedies were in each of the originals. Dulcamara in Restless Must Move Constantly, Calc-Phos in Desire for Traveling, Tuberculinum in both of these, okay, etc. One difficulty with this approach, which is in part mitigated by leaving the original rubrics as I've done, is that the combined rubric cannot now be deconstructed. We can't take it apart into the original rubrics that contributed to it. So let me do some tidying up for a moment here and go back to do this in another way, the way I usually do it and would recommend. Again, hold down the multiple select key, Control in Windows, Command on a Mac, and select the rubrics that you'd like to combine. This could be 2, 3, or more rubrics. Right-click on any of them. I'll use the two-finger tap on my Mac, and again select Combine Group Rubrics. This time, however, we'll group them, and this is without exception my preferred way of doing this. This is the default choice in the dialog box with the radio button, Add the selected rubrics to a group, checked. In the first drop-down menu here, with all remedies combining, select any lowercase letter. Now you could click this and scroll down and select the letter you'd like and click on it, but the easiest way to do this is just to click on the menu, okay? Type the letter you'd like to use and press the Return key. Now you can either click the Group button, or because it's highlighted, just hit the Return key on your keyboard. Your original rubrics appear to be unchanged, but now there's a lowercase letter preceding them, indicating that they're grouped together in the analysis and counted as if they were one rubric in the calculations for the analysis. Now, although they appear on separate lines, they're considered as if they were combined into a single larger inclusive rubric. Note that Tuberculinum, which is present in both of the original rubrics, in grade 3 in Desire for Travel, grade 2 in Restless Must Move Constantly, is given a score of 1 rubric, matched, with a grade of 3. And this grade is derived from the highest of the grades that appear in either of the originating rubrics. So Tuberculinum is given the same score in the analysis as is Calcarea phosphorica, which only appears in one of these rubrics, but in grade 3. Rubrics can be grouped as they're added to a clipboard, as well as after they've been added. So let's take a look at that. Perhaps we'd like to combine Mind Fastidious and Mind Conscientious about Trifles in a case in which we're not clear which of these two best represents the behavior of our patient. I'm going to add the first rubric in the way that I normally do, with a little addition to this. So Shift plus 1, okay? And now type any lowercase letter that you'd like to use that hasn't yet been used for another grouping. I'll just use an A, okay? And return. Mind Conscientious about Trifles. I'll add with the same plus 1 A, indicating the same group as I used for Fastidious, and again press Return. Now if I open up my clipboard, I'll see that these are grouped in the clipboard as they were added. And again, Arsenicum is given a match of 1 rubric, even though it's in both, as is Aloe. and the grade present for any remedy is the highest grade that appears in either of the two original rubrics. Let me pull up a case here. Okay. Here's an example of a case containing several groupings of rubrics. Note that I've done this analysis using only one clipboard, which is fine and which is what most folks do. I happen to be a fan of multiple clipboards for 3 reasons. First, I'm very often preparing cases for teaching or presentation, and the use of multiple clipboards often lends clarity to the points I'm trying to communicate. Second, I'm inherently not a very well-organized person, so I benefit greatly from any strategy to bring order to my normally chaotic life. And third, using separate clipboards permits us to use the Herskew analysis module to analyze our case. We'll take a look at that later on in a future tutorial. So I'm going to move these rubrics into separate clipboards, and if I've collected them all in one like this, I can move them in this way. I'm going to click on one, hold down my multiple selection key, Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, select these 2, drag them to clipboard 2. Select these 2. Now you notice that I have to move my cursor now and click on the rubric again in order to make it movable. To clipboard 3, this one into clipboard 4. Okay. And now if I just click, right click on any of these clipboards and choose select all clipboards for this analysis, I include them all here. So here's my analysis now organized into clipboards, a little more organized visually for me. Again, totally unnecessary, just clearer to view. And so I like to use this for presentation and also for myself because it's a little more organized. Now, I can make these divisions into clipboards more obvious than just the narrow lines I have here. If I go into my analysis settings, click the Clipboards tab, and choose Divided Clipboard Titles. Okay, I'll close the options. And I can even name these clipboards instead of just clipboard 1. If I, again, right-click on clipboard 1, change clipboard name, I can call this Too Neat. Okay? And call it anything I want, if that helps me to organize my analysis for my own use or for presentation purposes. I don't usually do that. I just use this minimal clipboard division. Let me quickly walk through setting up an analysis in multiple clipboards. I'll set up that same case, but assemble it as I'm searching for rubrics here. So we'll start out with Mind Fastidious and add this with a Shift plus 1A. Mind Conscientious About Trifles, Shift plus 1A. Okay. Now for my second group, Mind Fear Disease of Impending. Okay. Shift plus 1D for a second group. Oh, but I want this in a second clipboard. But I can do that. I can type greater than 2. This will direct this rubric into clipboard 2. Okay. And Mind Delusions Disease Incurable He Has, plus 1D, again directed to clipboard 2. But I can save myself a little bother here and change my active clipboard. I can either right-click on it and choose Set as Default, or much more easily, I can just hold down the Alt Option key and click on the clipboard to make it active. So my next rubric is Mind Impulse Morbid, plus 1I, and I don't have to direct it to clipboard 3 because it's already the active clipboard. Mind Suggestible, plus 1i for the same group. And now I'll make clipboard 4 active. And the rubric I need here is generals, food and drinks, ice cream, desire. Okay. Now, I'm not having to group this rubric. I'm just adding it singly, and I'm not going to change its grade. So just to make it really quick and easy, I'm going to forget the Shift key and just press the plus equals key, and it'll be added automatically. I can make this analysis visible now. Now let me erase this analysis and go on to a couple of other tricks. Rubrics of similar meaning can often be found in the cross-references to a particular rubric. For example, mind fastidious. You'll note a number of cross-references here below this. Think of these as the "you might also be interested in" links at Amazon.com. These don't necessarily mean the same thing, but if you're interested in looking at the fastidious rubric, you might be interested in these as well. So let's say we have a case where we have a patient we might like to use fastidious for, but maybe we want to broaden that a little bit and include too proper, careful, and desire for order, and combine these to make a larger rubric. So with the pointy hand on fastidious, hold on your multiple select key, Control on Windows, Command on a Mac, click on each of these subrubrics in turn. Note that a green check mark appears after the selected subrubric. Okay, so now we have the main rubric and these three not subrubrics, these three cross-references selected. And now hold on Shift plus. And note the dialog box appears and already proposes a lowercase letter for this grouping of rubrics. Okay, I didn't have to type that in, it's already there for me. Now I can change that if I'd like. I can change the weighting to 2 or 3 or 4. I can change the grouping letter. I'm going to change it to F for fastidious. Okay, and now I can just press the return key on my keyboard, and those rubrics are all added to the active clipboard, which I happen to have left as clipboard 4. We'll take a look at them. These are all grouped. The meaning of this grouping of rubrics is as if this were a single rubric in the analysis, with the meaning fastidious, or desire for order, or too proper, or careful, or any combination of that collection. Now, we might also encounter rubrics of similar meaning in a search. For example, I'll search for fever, delirium. And a number of rubrics come up. From the search results, I might want to select mind delirium during fever. I'll check mark the checkbox in front of it. And fever intense heat delirium with. Okay, and perhaps wish to use those together as a combined rubric in the case. So just check the checkboxes preceding the rubrics you want to combine. And use the Shift plus keyboard shortcut. Give it a grade, a weighting, and a letter. I'll pick D for delirium for the combination. Press the return key. And these are in my clipboard, combined to act as if they were a single rubric with the meaning mind delirium fever during, or intense heat with delirium, and or both. We might in some situations encounter a rubric with several subrubrics of interest and wish to include all of these in a combined or grouped rubric. For example, bladder, urination, retarded, press a long time, must. And note there are a number of subrubrics under here that may be of interest. So if I wish to create a larger, more inclusive rubric that includes this rubric, along with all of its more specific subrubrics, I could do this. I could just come up to the Take menu and choose Take and specify the options. Okay. Or I could use the Shift+ command and open up the Options dialog, which takes me to exactly the same place. I can choose a clipboard to which to direct my results, click All Subrubrics, and check All Rubrics in a Group with All Remedies. Okay, this will give me a group that's inclusive of all the remedies in the main rubric and all the subrubrics. Press the Return key, and I'll see that all of the subrubrics have been collected here along with the main rubric. Now I could take a look at these and decide that, you know, one of these maybe this one doesn't apply, so I can remove this. Use my right-click command and delete it, and I'm left with this. Now, one more situation which might bring forward clusters of rubrics of similar meaning, which we might consider adding combined or as groups, is when working with concepts files. Let me leave you merely with the mention of this for now, and take this up in a future tutorial focused on the use of synthesis concepts files in analysis. And check all subrubrics.